Welcome to another edition of Radio Influencers, a podcast series we're doing for Radio Update. I'm your host, Andy Meadows. On today's episode, we're going to talk about whether radio stations should have a digital person or everyone should contribute digitally. But first, let's look at the results from our recent Radio Update polls. In last week's Weekly Wire poll, we asked a question that actually fed off of last week's episode of Radio Influencers about radio's release date issue. It didn't get as big a response as we normally do, but that's to be expected on a short holiday week. But enough to show that there are still a lot of radio programmers who disagree with me on this subject. We asked, should radio stations wait until the official single release date to play a popular new song? 78% said yes, and 22% said no. Obviously, if you watched last week's episode, you know that I do not think radio should wait until the release date to play a new song that people in our markets are already listening to on multiple other platforms based on data from our local markets. But a lot of people take that poll before they watch the episode. At least that's what I'm hoping. So maybe some of them watched it and I changed their mind. We'll find out in the future if we do a part 2. We can ask a similar question. By the way, this year I'm going to use that market level data I talked so much about to put together some 1-hour Christmas countdowns featuring the top Christmas tunes in specific markets. I'll DJ them myself with a special guest voice, and we'll also highlight a few new Christmas songs that are also performing well in that market. It's market exclusive. Radio station consultants' clients have first right of refusal, but other than that, it's open to anyone who wants it, free of charge. We keep 2 minutes of the inventory in that hour, and you get the rest. Plus, I'll include a video promo and some video social reels to help promote it. If you're interested, head to radiostationconsultant.com and click on Christmas Countdowns to find out more. Now let's get into today's episode. If you have any questions or thoughts after watching or listening, email them to me at andy@radiostationconsultant.com or editor@radioupdate.com, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. In the early 2000s, when we all started to realize that radio stations needed to have more of an online presence, all radio owners, operators, and managers began to wrestle with this question. Should we train our radio staff on digital or hire an employee with a digital background to help our radio staff that struggles with digital? Most stations or groups initially tried training their existing staffs, realizing only a small percentage were taking to it, and pivoted to just hiring a quote-unquote digital person. The challenge with that model, however, is that often even that percentage of radio staff that were picking it up started offloading everything onto that digital person, so what many stations, markets, and even some groups ended up with was a single person handling everything digital. That wasn't the best approach for an industry trying to fight off emerging new digital competitors then, and it's an even worse approach now. That's because there's a huge difference between what digital encompassed in the early 2000s and today. Back then, it was mainly social feeds, station websites, and maybe station apps. Now, digital includes audio-video podcasts, video reels, video live streams, blogs or articles, and there are also a ton more platforms. Plus, as we all know from personal experience, our content consumption habits have all changed significantly since then. In 2000, only 32% of the U.S. population owned a cell phone. Now, 98% of the U.S. population owns a cell phone, 91% globally, not to mention how much more capable those cell phones are today than they were then. And the average screen time now in the U.S. is 7 hours a day. Gen Z is even higher at 9 hours a day. Now, 74% of American adults use social media and 84% use YouTube. In 2000, that number was essentially zero for social media, and YouTube didn't even exist until it launched in 2005. We now live in a content-driven world. I know the phrase content is king is cliche, but things are often cliche for a reason. Content is incredibly important now for any company, especially a media company that's trying to break through. That's why the days of on-air talent choosing not to create digital content are essentially over. You can't work on the radio anymore and refuse to create any digital content, at least not if you want to get paid a living wage and have any hopes of getting bigger, better jobs. Audio is still incredibly important, but it isn't enough anymore. Luckily, because digital is so much broader than it was 25 years ago, and because there are so many more affordable and user-friendly tools now than there were even 5 years ago, Everyone, and I mean everyone, is capable of creating some kind of digital content, generally multiple kinds. They just need to be encouraged, incentivized, coached, and held accountable to help get them over the hump. Plus, digital content creation isn't just for on-air talent either. It's for anyone in the building who has an aptitude for it. All hands on deck at this point. To be clear, I'm not saying to fire your digital person. For all the reasons I just mentioned, those people are more important than ever, hence why they're getting too expensive for some stations and groups. If you're lucky enough to have one, keep them. Just make sure they don't become a catch-all. Instead, get them to share their tips and tricks, which sometimes they keep close to their vest for job security. That, of course, is not necessary because of their aptitude and interest in digital. They are likely to always be ahead of everyone anyway. But ideally, we want to encourage and incentivize them to share their knowledge so they can turn everyone in the building into a digital person. Lately, I've seen some great examples of radio stations either losing their digital point person because they took a higher paying job or restructuring their role so they were managing and training instead of just executing, then adopting a team approach where everyone contributes and seeing a spike in both the volume of digital content created and the quality of that content. Do the stats always immediately go up? No, they rarely immediately go up. This stuff takes time, dedication, strategy, a willingness to experiment, fail on some things, succeed on others, double down on those successes, and most importantly, commit and stick to it. Pretty quickly, you'll start seeing some organic growth, which you can fuel with a small budget to boost and promote, and then you will absolutely see those numbers increase. What do you think? Should radio stations have a digital person, or should everyone contribute to digital? Email me at andy@radiostationconsultant.com or editor@radioupdate.com and let me know. As always, if you have some thoughts on this or any other hot radio topic you'd like to share, email it to me at submissions@radioupdate.com. Thanks for listening, watching, and reading. We'll be back next week with a new episode of Radio Influencers. Radio Influencers is a Radio Update production. New episodes are released on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern.